And we are back to What Did AI Say? At VickyL-4AI on YouTube. Thank you so very much for coming back to the podcast. Gratitude is always the attitude. Let's go ahead and jump right into today's question. Just a little tidbit of information. This is a continuation of episodes 100, 101, and today we're on episode 102. Let's go ahead and find out what the question is that we asked AI, and we will start with Chatgpt. How did egalitarian systems function and why were they dismantled? Now remember that in episode 100 we talked about patriarchy, and then in episode 101 we talked about the indigenous matriarchy, and now we're talking about the egalitarian systems. Okay, here we go. ChatGPT's answer. Egalitarian systems are social systems that aim to minimize concentrated power, inherited hierarchy, and extreme inequality. They have existed in many forms throughout human history, especially in small-scale societies, indigenous cultures, some agricultural communities, and certain political experiments. They were not always perfectly equal, but they generally emphasized shared responsibility, reciprocal obligations, and limits on dominion. I like that. ChatGPT said a lot right there. Let's repeat that. ChatGPT's answer: egalitarian systems are social systems that aim to minimize concentrated power, inherited hierarchy, and extreme inequality. They have existed in many forms throughout human history, especially in small-scale societies, indigenous cultures, some agricultural communities, and certain political experiments. They were not always perfectly equal, but they generally emphasized shared responsibility, reciprocal obligations, and limits on domination. How egalitarian systems functioned. 1. Shared access to resources. Many egalitarian societies treated land, water, hunting grounds, or food sources as communal rather than privately owned by a ruling class. Got that? Examples include many hunter-gatherer societies, some indigenous confederacies, village commons systems in Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. In these systems, wealth accumulation was often discouraged. Hoarding could damage social standing. Food and labor were redistributed through kinship networks or community obligation. Anthropologists studying groups like the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Kung San, and various Pacific Island societies found extensive traditions of sharing and consensus building. 2. Decision-making through consensus. Instead of centralized rulers, councils, elders, clan representatives, community assemblies often governed collectively. Leadership was frequently temporary, situational, based on trust or skill rather than coercive authority. In many societies, a leader could influence but not command. Some indigenous governance systems, including parts of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, used layered councils and deliberation processes that influenced later democratic thinkers in Europe and North America. 3. Kinship and mutual obligation. Social stability often depended on extended family structures, reciprocity, collective child rearing, mutual aid. A person's survival depended heavily on cooperation, which discouraged extreme individual accumulation or exploitation. In many societies, elders cared for children collectively. Labor was distributed seasonally. Prestige came from generosity rather than ownership. Gender relations in some egalitarian systems. Not all egalitarian societies were gender equal, but many had more balanced gender roles than later rigid patriarchal states. Examples included matrilineal inheritance systems, shared agricultural labor, women's influence in council selection, recognition of multiple gender roles in some cultures. In several indigenous societies in the Americas, women held substantial economic and political authority. Why egalitarian systems were dismantled. There was no single cause. Different societies changed for different reasons, but several recurring pressures appeared throughout history. 1. Agricultural surplus and property accumulation. As agriculture intensified, food surpluses became storable. Land ownership became more valuable. Wealth could accumulate across generations. This often led to class divisions, permanent leadership roles, armies and taxation systems, hereditary elites. Control over land and stored grain became a major source of power. Warfare and militarization. Frequent warfare tended to favor centralized command structures, standing armies, hierarchical leadership. Societies under military pressure often concentrated authority in chiefs, kings, or warrior classes. Over time, military power frequently became political power. Examples include, the development of many ancient states in Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, and Mesoamerica. 3. Colonization and empire expansion. Many egalitarian or semi-egalitarian indigenous systems were disrupted or destroyed through European colonization, land seizure, forced conversion, slavery, resource extraction, disease. Colonial governments often replaced local governance with centralized administrative systems favorable to imperial control and commercial extraction. The destruction of communal land systems was especially important. For example, enclosure movements in Europe privatized commons land. Colonial administrations frequently imposed private property systems on communal societies. 4. Economic incentives and stratification. Trade expansion sometimes increased inequality because merchants accumulated wealth, debt systems emerged, labor became commodified. Economic specialization created social classes with unequal influence and bargaining power. Ideological and religious justifications. Hierarchical systems were often justified through divine kingship, caste systems. We did episodes about the caste system and the class system. So if you want to do a deeper dive in those, you can just go back and look through the titles. Racial theories, we all know about that. Patriarchal doctrines, claims of civilizing missions. Hopefully we're all beginning to see that we weren't the uncivilized. It was them. These ideologies helped elites legitimize unequal power structures. For example, European colonial empires often claimed moral or religious authority to dominate other societies. Aristocracies justified hereditary privilege as natural or divinely ordained. Important nuance. It is important not to romanticize egalitarian societies as perfect utopias. Nothing's perfect. Many still had conflict, gender divisions, violence, social pressures, intergroup warfare. Likewise, hierarchical societies also enabled large-scale infrastructure, complex scientific institutions, state-level coordination, urban development. Human societies have existed on a spectrum between egalitarian and hierarchical arrangements rather than in a single fixed form. Modern echoes of egalitarian principles. Elements of egalitarian organizations still exist today in cooperatives, mutual aid networks, labor unions, participatory democracies, commons-based resource systems, some indigenous governance traditions, social welfare states. Modern debates about health. Okay, this is going to be, before I jump right into this is going to be ChatGPT's summary or final thought. Modern debates about wealth inequality, democracy, labor rights, and resource ownership often revisit questions that earlier egalitarian societies grappled with in different forms. Okay, that was pretty good. That was ChatGPT. Let's go ahead and jump right into Deepseek's answer. And just in case you forgot the question, allow me to repeat it. How did egalitarian systems function and why were they dismantled? Okay, Deepseek's answer. For about 97% of human history, most people lived in small, mobile bands that were actively egalitarian. Rather than being merely poor, these societies were deliberately designed to prevent anyone from gaining lasting power over another person using three core mechanisms. How they function. The egalitarian toolkit. The egalitarian toolkit. Reverse dominance. The group is the ultimate authority. The rank and file form moralistic coalitions to intimidate, ridicule, ostracize, or even kill any upstart who tries to dominate others. This included subtle tactics like gossip and public shaming to target those who were too greedy or boastful. Consensus and sharing. Okay, let me just jump back to the reverse dominance thing. I'm not for that. No, there has to be a middle ground. Okay, let's continue. Consensus and sharing. Leadership is informal and situational, with all major decisions made by group consensus. Sharing isn't just altruism, it's a form of risk management. Demand sharing ensures no one starves by expecting those with extra to give it up, or others will simply take it. Structural mobility. Okay, that one right there, that's going to come into play anyway. That's I think, although I'm reading a book that's challenging human nature, I believe that when you have the majority of people who don't have, and they're struggling and they're hungry and they're starving and they're not receiving what they need, they will take it. That we've seen that throughout history. It starts off nice with marches and strikes and attempts at agreements. And if that doesn't pan through, then you just take it by force. That's just how it goes. Okay, let's move on. Structural mobility. Life is designed to prevent wealth from accumulating. People are highly mobile and their possessions are minimal. Simply walking away or threatening to was a powerful political tool. Why they were dismantled. The path to hierarchy. The most dominant theory in the Neolithic Revolution, agriculture, this shift dismantled egalitarian structures by making inequality possible and self-reinforcing. Interesting. This shift dismantled egalitarian structures by making inequality possible and self-reinforcing. Private property. Storable grain and domesticated animals created inheritable assets, a concept foreign to hunter-gatherers. Resource defense. Valuable farmland and herds couldn't be moved. This incentivized defense, creating the first territorial boundaries and insider versus outsider distinctions. Okay, here we go. We're getting to the good stuff. Population boom and elites. Surplus food allowed a population explosion, forcing sedentary village life. The scale made consensus difficult, allowing ambitious individuals to leverage control of stored goods and trade to build permanent wealth. Spread by conquest. Once stratified societies formed, they were aggressive conquerors, often displacing their egalitarian neighbors. They also experienced greater technological and military specialization, giving them a competitive edge over more peaceful small-scale groups. In short, the dismantling was not a sudden collapse, but a gradual, often violent process driven by new technologies and ways of life that made the old egalitarian toolkit impossible to maintain. Okay, so Deepseek's final thought. That was short. If you'd like to explore specific examples of these societies or the archaeological evidence for this transition, feel free to ask. So Deepseek is offering, if you want to do a deeper dive, it is here for you. So do your best, go all out. Okay, so how does any of this information affect our daily lives? Well, since we have been talking about the pros and cons of patriarchy, I thought that we should delve into matriarchy or multilineal, biarchal, and this particular one, which is egalitarian, so that we could get a better understanding. I think that in episode 100, there was a statement, and I think that was under Chatgpt, where it says that many of the earlier societies didn't just use one or the other. They used various parts of all three, and some just used one, and others might have just used others, but many of the different societies did use variations of all three. I truly believe that our country may need to delve into this and do the same. I think that in a sense, had our systems not been so racist, then we probably could have kept them. But because of how they're structured and how they were initially set up as racist systems, it is my belief that they all got to go. They all got to go, and we got to start from scratch with this information in mind so that we can create the best system that provides the most equality for the most people. Because right now, we ain't getting it. 99% of the population is not well, I wouldn't say 99. I'm going to say like 90. I'll say like 90. It's probably like 95 or a little bit more, but I'll say 90. 90% of the population is not being represented. And unfortunately, unfortunately for us, that's the majority of us. The majority of us are not being represented because everything is now under the control of the elite one percenters and a madman. So as we go through this decline, hopefully we learn the many lessons that are being revealed to us so that we can become better people. And if we become better people, if we become more informed people, if we're no longer allowing our government to hide the truth from us, we can make better decisions, not just for who we put in office, but also for how our country runs and presents itself to the world, how it runs for the people, how it provides for the people, and how it presents itself to the rest of the world. So hopefully we're able to learn that and to rebuild bigger and better and finally become great. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to our positive saying for today, and I believe that it is positive. Let's see. I have so many different sayings. This one comes from who? Oh, okay. It's actually a version of a Tony Robbins saying. This is an old one too. Okay, here we go. Decisions are powerful. They are the one force that starts to reshape and reorganize or sculpt our reality. Let's repeat that. Decisions are powerful. They are the one force that starts to reshape and reorganize or sculpt our reality. Very true. That is very true. Okay, that's all I have for you. Episode 102, 102. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the podcast. We the people have the power. See you next episode. Peace.